Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
All right, with a beautiful flag from Europe. So I'm Sebastian Doncker, and I will present some European challenge, and we can compare that to New Zealand eventually. I will briefly talk about the European legislation on water, and I will describe, explain some different approach, alternatives, restoration approach, complementary to my presentation, hopefully. And then we, as a conclusion, a little bit, we will see what can be learned for the Motueka system, the Motueka River. So as you may know, Europe is a really crowded place, especially Western Europe, where I used to work before New Zealand. Because of intensive agriculture, but also because of just general land development. This has immediately an effect, strong effect, that is the lack of space for river channel, the lack of space for erosion, and some decrease in biodiversity. Also, there is different kind of strong pollution because of the history or just actual pollutions. So what is the consequences? One of the consequences is that what we call the ecosystem services are declining, decreasing really. So one example of ecosystem service is the drinkable water or the wild fish. And in New Zealand, unfortunately, it started to happen in some way. And those decline or those problems could be accelerated by the climate change effect. Those pictures are from Belgium in July 2021, when there was a flood here in Motueka. There was a big flood in the West Valley in Belgium, and unfortunately 50 people died and 200 died in Germany. So it's really strong problems. About legislation, it starts really in Europe with the implementation of the sewage water treatment system in 1991, and then the EU Water Framework Directive about 2000 start to prioritize, so make a priority on water quality, which was great, but also on bioindicators like fish. So bioindicator is just something you look at that integrate all the parameters. So fish need good quality water, but also an habitat to live, an habitat to develop, like some spawning areas and stuff like that. And more recently, the Commission pushed to integrate some the flood directive to try to find solution for all those floods. So what's happened from more than 30 years now, people try to find solutions. And one of the solutions was the river contract, what we call the river contract. It's about a river catchment group, honestly. And there is really positive impact, like to inform people, to explain, so make people aware about the main issues, to implement local pilot projects, etc. Unfortunately, there is more some frustration that could happen too. Why? Because this river catchment group does not have the authority to change like the river manager way of doing things, and it could be really frustrated. So like a lack of result, effective result after a few years, a political project, not enough finance, etc. So yeah, apparently it's not enough to change and to take care of the river. Other kind of solution were undertaken, like to create dams and big ones sometimes. So the main reason were not at the beginning flood control, it was more to provide some water for intensive agriculture and big towns actually, and make a little bit of hydroelectricity on them. But now they had played a role in the recent flood, and unfortunately the way that they were built were not sufficient. Like in the West Valley, they have, the lake was full upstream, so they have to just opened the gate and it was the disaster. So another approach well described by Mike was those rock wall or quite engineer solution to channelize the rivers, so or gravel extraction. The problem with rock walls, if you look at that more carefully, of course it's less space for rivers and less habitat for biodiversity, again, as Mike explained. And you can have other process because the energy of the river is transferring in other parts. So you can have incision on the riverbed itself and you can have more erosion. And then because you've got more erosion, you want to put more rocks wall. So it's like a cycle. So about the solutions that are built in Belgium and Luxembourg that are implement, there is the kind of recreate some floodplain just upstream of the some village and towns and create that, try to remeandering the river, so give some space to the river. So there is more and more example like that. Another thing was to take care of the water quality, as I said, and it's quite a strong decision here in Belgium, but also other EU states to not allow pesticide, especially herbicides, anymore near the water because of some I suspect influence of them and bad influence on bad impact, sorry, on the biodiversity, especially like eggs from the fish and things like that. So with a transition period, but in 2019 it was 0 herbicides for public spaces, and in 2020, like individuals are not even allowed to use herbicides, which is quite strong. And so what's happened? There is a lot of enterprise arriving on the market with some kind of alternatives. So it creates a new market for that. Another example, I just Mike answer a question about that. It was, so the insurance, if you build a house in the floodplain now, you've got no insurance. So of course it's a kind of solution in a way to prevent your house to be flooded. And what the governments did is to build those good maps. So now if you want to build in those areas, it's really to your own risk. In France, they start to try some deals with the farmers. And again, Mike already told that it's about how, so you can still farm the land, of course, but you pay something, and then you have to accept to be flooded. So those kind of solutions arrive in Europe, definitely. In Holland, there is also this problem with the polders. As you may know, the land is lower than the sea, so it's quite a tricky situation. They have to use pump to get rid of the water. But with the climate change effect, they just get rid of some structure that are too expensive for maintenance. So they just, give more space to nature. In Switzerland, in the same, I don't have the time to develop a lot, but there was really a consensus around river and to recreate floodplains and natural environments. And in Spain, there is some famous project about get rid of the old dams that create some sediment blockage and not only fish barriers. And so also those old dams are really expensive for maintenance, so maintenance costs. So they just decide to wild the river again. And the same tendency exists in different kind of countries through Europe because of that directive and the flood directive too. So again, here it's an example in Austria for the Mur River, where they just start to remeandering and create a new floodplain.